Well, speaking of leaders weighing in last night, it made for a very jarring image when President Obama spoke to the nation after the grand jury's decision. Now, millions of Americans watched scenes of the violence and the chaos on the streets of Ferguson on the split screen as the president urged calm. And he appeared to be walking a very fine line as he expressed sympathy for the protesters when he said this.
We need to recognize that the situation in Ferguson speaks to broader challenges that we still face as a nation. The fact is, in too many parts of this country, a deep distrust exists between law enforcement and communities of color. Some of this is the result of the legacy of racial discrimination in this country.
The story drawing international coverage, with one British newspaper, The Guardian, saying the racially charged shooting in Ferguson presented a problem for the nation's first black president from the start. The paper writing, quote, Obama's early and at times emotional intervention in the national debate that followed the killing of Trayvon Martin was blamed by many critics for inflaming racial tensions, and the White House had strained to avoid similar intervention with Ferguson. But he has also struggled to make clear that his sympathy also lies with many demonstrators in the city who feel that the police are not always on their side. And Senator Brown, I have to say, I mean, the president interjects him in these local issues, and at times it seemed made it worse. I mean, watching the side-by-side of the president talking last night, I don't know if he's just so irrelevant that people aren't listening, or he's making it worse because his comments really were, on the one hand, peaceful protests, but on the other hand, he didn't help when it came to inflaming racial tensions.
Well, he's in a tough place, obviously. He is the president. He is the leader of this country. People still do look to him for guidance. Obviously, you know of my differences with the president. The fact that he was there in a calming effort, it would have been nice if he could have come out a little earlier to let people know, regardless of the decision, this is how we're going to protest. In the history of Martin Luther King, peaceful protests. Let people know how you're thinking and what your thoughts are, but do it without tearing apart the community, without looting and destroying buildings. To see those, we all saw them. Everybody saw what was happening. You saw people disregarding the rule of law, disregarding their own citizens, their friends potentially, the people that they shop at their stores every day. They disregarded that. They went out and they ripped their businesses and their lives apart. There's a larger problem. We have a black president. We have black Supreme Court justices. Massachusetts, a black governor. We have made amazing strides. We can always do better, but it's not going to be done by dividing us. And the president has been known as a divider in this country right now.
And from the start, Harris, he came out, remember, initially this summer, he came off the golf course, President Obama, when he weighed in on Ferguson, and he did put blame on the cops. He was lecturing the police officers, and I brought up earlier, people are saying this morning, oh, where are the cops? Well, the cops have been yelled at and scolded by this administration a number of times, so they're in a pretty precarious position, wouldn't you say?
You know, I agree with you, Senator, though. The president's really in a no-win situation. When you look at statistically, he is one of the most polarizing, politically polarizing figures in American history. So he was going to have a difficult time bringing people together anyway, which is one of the reasons why you've seen him weigh in less and less, in my opinion, on issues like this, and do so less emotionally. However, last week he said, quote, I want to make sure police are trained so they can distinguish between a gangbanger and a kid who just happens to be wearing a hoodie but otherwise is a good kid and not doing anything wrong. Michael Brown was not wearing a hoodie. He was wearing a distinctive red ball cap. He is on video putting his hands on a store owner. We need the truth. We need to be honest with each other before we can bring about change. The truth. And if we're not getting it from the president, from whom will it come?
May I add that the grand jury, their role is to determine what the facts are. They did that. 12 people who had nothing to gain. Actually, the pressure was on them to indict and to do something. But in fact, they did the right thing. They took all the evidence. And now that Eric Holder's reviewing this matter again, he still has to deal with the facts that are, he can't make up new facts.
But you're right. The easiest thing for them to do, living in that community, would have been to deliver at least an involuntary manslaughter indictment. And they didn't do that. And that says a lot about the evidence and the process. And, you know, there were those of us who were quick to rush to judgment in the early days. But I have to tell you, what happened last night, I'm now looking to the future, to today and beyond. What are they going to say today to make sure we don't have a repeat of last night? Because we've seen in other cities, it can escalate, it can get worse and worse and worse, but it can also get better. And hopefully today we'll find that turning point and that rational.
And who will that people be? Will that be those people be who'll come in and say the right things?
The leadership.
Will they be those people who've been inciting some of this?
Yeah,
and needs to be our role models.
And very quickly, it's very disappointing because the narrative that we heard from other news networks about what went down in Ferguson was very different if you look at the evidence that the grand jury released this morning. I encourage everyone to read it. All right, get ready for a showdown on Capitol Hill.